Hello, and thank you for coming to the CMU International Film Festival's live discussion event for This Is Not a Burial, It's a Resurrection. My name is Joshua Wyatt, a junior directing major at Carnegie Mellon, and I will be facilitating today's discussion. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. Today's event is being recorded, and by joining us, you are agreeing to having your participation recorded, as we will have this video posted to our website for future references. To make sure this event functions smoothly, all your microphones will be muted throughout the discussion. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function on the bottom bar of the screen in the reactions tab. For those unfamiliar with Zoom, you can find this by clicking on the participations tab. You can also write comments using the chat function, also located on the bottom of the screen. We will have a Q&A at the end where you can ask questions. And if you don't have any questions, providing comments about the film. To keep things fluid, we ask that you hold off on questions until then. Again, you may use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen in the reactions tab. I will then unmute you and the floor will be yours. If you prefer not to speak, please write a question in the chat box at that time, and I will ask the question on your behalf. I would now like to introduce to you tonight our moderator, Macrina Lelei, the Program Director of African Studies at the University of Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Joshua. I am pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And of course, I'm excited about moderating the event based on the film, This Is Not a Burial, It Is a Resurrection, directed by Lemohang Jeremiah Mosese. So I'm pleased to meet the director, and I think it's going to be a wonderful session. I definitely viewed the film, and I must say that it surely is a powerful film that provoked various responses for me, and I'm sure for many of you as well. So this will be our opportunity this evening to delve into some of those storylines that came up in the film. So we are hosting this live discussion session to share our reactions, our comments, our questions, and of course with the director, who we are very honored to have in our presence. So as the day goes along, I'll definitely invite participation from everyone to share their thoughts of the film and ask any questions. So it's not going to be just questions. You're free to share your thoughts. You're free to tell us your take on the film. I will start by just personally telling you that I did appreciate the film very much for many reasons, including that Mantoa, the main character, was played by Mary Twala, one of my favorite actors actually all time. God rest her soul. She appeared in other movies that I really like, such as Sarafina, Beat the Drum, Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. So when I saw her, I just was like, oh my God, I have to watch this, you know. So that was it for me, and it really made the storyline very interesting. I found her role to be very fascinating. Although she does not say much in the film, there's something powerful about her character, just the expressions, her silence, you know. For me, those were really things that sparked a lot of interest for me. So when the story started to really pick up, when the news about the village, you know, being taken over because of development came up, and then she came alive, you know, because all the time she was just so frustrated, so desperate because of losing people, you know, in her family and all that kind of thing. But when she came alive, you saw this fierce person fighting for her community, defending the spiritual heritage of the community. I thought that was really powerful. So for her, there is no boundary between the living and the dead, and they should not be separated. And you could hear from, you know, the things they were talking about and saying. So as I was doing some research after I'd read this, after I had watched the film, I found a lot of interesting things that other people have said about the film. And I thought I would share one or two before I actually go on to introduce the author, and then we can begin our discussion. So some of the things that really piqued my interest was in an article in The Guardian by Kath Clark. She wrote that This is an extraordinary and otherworldly or ghostly feature film from the tiny landlocked kingdom of Lesotho. Of course, it's a small country with a population of about 2.1 million people located in Southern Africa. It is the tale of a rebel spirit, an elderly woman who opposes government plans to flood her village, making way for a dam and making way for modern development. And then Alan Hunter in the Screen Daily describing the film says, it is a vivid, beautifully crafted reflection on identity, community, and the tension between respecting age-old traditions and accepting the seemingly unstoppable march of progress. So it is a film, in my view, about resistance and resilience. The director interweaves ideas around displacement, collective identity, and history, taking an almost mythic quality with a strong sense of ritual and style. For me, the whole idea of land and land justice that came up as themes in the novel, in the film, are everywhere. These are issues that you read about, you hear about, but they are everywhere. And these are issues that bring about a lot of conflict, as you could also see in the film. So the film, for me, shines a light on the issues about land justice, forced demolition, and relocation. These issues occur every day, even in other locations. It could be anywhere, not just Lesotho. So I feel like we are all so lucky to have the film director with us today to help us dive deeper into the story, dive deeper into the issues or into the themes that come up in the film. So before we proceed, I am honored to introduce the film director, Lemohang Jeremiah Mosese. He's a self-taught filmmaker from Lesotho, based in Berlin. He has, directed and produced several films, including his film Mother, that has won 6 awards at the Final Cut in Venice workshop, and went on to premiere at the 2019 Berlin International Film Festival. He was also one of 3 filmmakers selected for the Biennale College Cinema Lab with his feature film, This Is Not a Burial, It Is a Resurrection. Mosese is an alumnus of many programs, including Focus Features Africa First, among others. So there are so many things, so many huge qualities that I think I won't take too much time, but it would be nicer to hear from the author. So I was thinking that I'll start this program by posing a few questions to the director and then open it up for questions from the audience, if that is acceptable, Joshua. All right. So, Mr. Mosese, this question is for you. Just as I was watching the film, I was thinking about the title, and I was wondering to myself, what motivated you to choose this title for the film?
Yeah, I would like to thank you guys for tuning in, for being here, and for this invitation. I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful, and you guys are very kind. Yeah, the title of the film. I think I'm drawn to something that has no form. I'm drawn to formless things, to things that holds no structure. I am drawn to. It's very ironic because in my life I prefer structure for me in order to function, to create. I need the routine. But the things that I actually inspires me, that I like, that the work that I like to do, I don't like, I like it when it's fluid. I like it when it's abstract, right, rather than concrete. So the titles always help me to not, I always feel like when people name movies, they tell you what the movie is about. That's my understanding of how people always name movies. But for me, I always feel like I'm dealing with a lot of ideas. I don't deal with one idea. So my titles are almost like abstract, that it's almost like that is what I want people to maybe to get out of the film. They get abstract things, ideas, stream of ideas. It's not one thing about a widow who wants to be buried in in her village, or who longs to die. It's many other ideas. So I always feel like the title helped me to sort of it has that fluidity that it could be anything. That the idea of the resurrection, or this is not a burial, the metaphor of it, it could be anything. It doesn't necessarily specific to the storyline. Of course, it's a part of it, but there's also more to that title. So it's not just one thing. So I think I like it when it's sort of abstract, that it's not too clear to sort of pigeonhole people to think one way.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was reading somewhere about you, and I saw that you started off as a poet. You like to do poetry before you branched off into filmmaking. Mm-hmm. Now, tying it to your idea of liking the abstract and not so much structure, how did you enjoy doing poetry before you actually moved to doing film?
I mean, I wrote really bad poetry. I really wrote very bad, not so good. I mean, it has always been, in my head, it was always so coherent and making sense and very beautiful. I would love these words that my head will come up with. And once I tried to share it, it just sounded so horrible. And, but I think I enjoyed as long as it was in my head. And once I shared with people, I just never liked it. I just never liked it. And not because of confidence, because especially at that time when I was growing up, I'm not a good communicator. I'm still working on it. I think I have I mean, it could, if I could be literally diagnosed right now, I'll have so many things that I know they're lying dormant, and I don't want to name those, goblins. I don't want to know about them. So yeah, so since I was struggling with communication, I think I didn't necessarily enjoy sharing it, but I enjoyed when it was in my head, like those few lines, those few stanzas that I'll write them just for myself, but not necessarily for people. And I was enjoying that. I was enjoying that very much. It's something that I still do now and then, just to write. Yeah.
Okay, so this film is full of very powerful imagery, very powerful art, everywhere. And I was wondering, what kind of research did you do, and how long did you spend researching before actually producing this film? Because I can imagine a lot went into it.
Not much, actually, not much research. I think I think it's a research of my whole life, because pretty much I didn't necessarily specifically research for, okay, I'm going to shoot a movie now. I want to make the subject, about the subject, I'm going to research about it. But I think it was a lifelong research, because every frame, it's pretty much my life, about my family, everything. It's literally connected to me, every frame, every scene, every gesture in the film. It's connected to me, it's connected to my family. So it's something that I guess maybe it's a lifelong research. And also I've been training for a long time. I just was not sending films to festival. I was just not making necessarily films. I was just doing video art, and but I've been waiting and meditating on my ideas and my observations, and I wanted to sculpture them somehow, to capture these ideas in frames, not necessarily in scenes, but in frames. And so these are ideas that I've been having since my childhood, and my observations, and then I wanted to find a way of squeezing them into 2-hour movie. And so it was not necessarily like a research, particularly about the film. I mean, I think I enjoy the idea of stumbling upon things rather than having all this extensive research, which is beautiful. I've seen people work who do it, like they will research to the latter. And all they do is just to paste and copy and paste, which I love this process because you learn so much about other stuff. And I wish I could do this, but for me, by the time I get there, I think I'm always so bored that I have. It's almost like I like when I stumble upon things that when I find myself, when I imagine myself, and a lot has to do with my imaginations. But of course, there's also other films that are done in this way about the resettlement, and they also are books that I've written. Pretty much, it happens exactly the same way. That people, the government will tell the people, and then later on, the people will be left with no choice, and they will have to resettle. So and then also it has something to do with my country, that at that time in Lesotho, I mean even now, that people are still fighting they wanted to retain their lands, but they are being forcefully removed into the outskirts of the city, and for the dams to be constructed. So it's something that was already very close to me, because one of the places is where my grandmother's come from. So it was very places that were very, the topic that was very, I was very familiar with it.
Okay, that has almost answered one more question that I actually had for you, which was, how much did your own interests in the spiritual and the political, themes that seem to come out of the film, how much did that impact the film?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, how much did your own interests in spiritual things and political issues impact the making of the film? Are you a very spiritual person?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's a very tricky one. It is a very tricky one, because I think my interest in spirituality, I think it's because of my interest in human condition or human nature. That whether we like it or not, we exhibit the same sort of this repelling forces. This both sides, whether devil, whether God. I think it's a pure exhibit of who we are as human beings. And I think this, for me, was my fascination. My fascination has something to do with the idea of crying out for something that is beyond us, and also having the other part of us that is in our nature, that it's not necessarily kind. And I think this somehow always been my obsession since I was a child. And also I had my own dealing with the spirituality. And I think somehow I'm very fascinated about this. It's fascination to me. Yeah.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. So I think what we can do now is turn it over to the audience so that people can ask their questions or share their comments or thoughts about what they saw or how they understood the story. So Joshua, I'll turn it back to you to see if we have any people in the audience who have questions for the director.
Okay. Well, then you have to put your hand up as a participant. All right. No, not like that. No.
Is there any questions from the audience? or comments?
Say you do, say you do.
Yes.
Hi, yes, Elizabeth Gordon.
Yes, actually, my husband is going to ask. Okay.
Oh, amazing.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say how much I incredibly enjoyed the film. And the question that I had was, it's not clear to me how a major dam project promotes the economic growth and benefit to the country as a whole. Would he like to comment on that, since apparently dams have been built?
Yeah.
As progress, and it's not clear to me how that turns into economic benefit for the people.
I think it does. I think it does. It does, but I think it does in a large scale, because now there's electricity that is generated out of that, and there's also infrastructure, and there's also roads are built in those areas, and there's sort of infrastructure, there's sort of industry, but also, of course, there are sacrificial lambs of these people who are relying on farming.
Right.
And their whole lives, it's their livestock and farming. And suddenly now they have to live in the outskirts of the city where they cannot farm. Like in many other countries, that whenever there is a development or progress, there will be sacrificial lambs.
We also want to say Dumeleme. We lived in for 2 years. Dumela. And also, one of our striking things was how much water there was. So it's hard to believe we needed more. I mean, it wasn't a country that had a water deficit. So anyway, that was a little questionable. And I guess we hadn't realized that there were dam projects.
Yes.
Amazing. We're going to move on to Fran.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for that great film. There was a scene where when the villagers were telling the chief that they didn't want to leave their land, and he came back to them with the statement that they didn't own the land; that the land was owned by the king. Is that typical of the land ownership situation there?
Yeah, but this happened, it doesn't really often happen. People don't even know, many people don't even know about this. I guess because it never happened where they have to now prove that the land that doesn't belong to them. There was just one case that I had, and this was just one case that I had where a person used that to get rid of people, a couple of people actually. Because we grew up not knowing this, it's only later on that I found out that actually the land belongs to the king. He is a custodian of the land.
So how did the people then take possession of the land, or I guess I'm just curious about that structure.
I mean, nobody ever succeeded, really. They don't succeed. It's just, I mean, it's the Goliath and David situation. Well, except that the Goliath is the one who kills the David. So nobody really succeeds, but I mean, there are many cases where they will fight, but eventually they will have to move. They will have to be resettled. Eventually, they will have to move to the place where it's disintegrated for them.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered the question.
No, I think, yeah, you did. Thank you.
Amazing. Is there any other questions or comments or anything like that?
May I just ask one small thing? What year was the movie set in? What was it portraying? What year?
For me, in my head, it could be in like I was looking around maybe somewhere in 1800s, and I was looking at now. So I wanted to. There are scenes in the film where I tried to um, to um, to not be held by time, because one of the themes that I was dealing with in the movie is about the wheel of time. So there are scenes in the movie, especially with the funeral, that you don't see you see the messenger coming, and suddenly it's a funeral. That the time has passed, that there's no time, and I like to play with the past and the present almost in the same frame, or in the same shot. So that was one of the or carrying themes throughout the film. This this living outside of time. I don't know if it makes sense. So for me, in my head, actually, occurred long time ago. The film was set long time ago, and also it could be set also in the future.
Beautiful. We have another question from Scott.
Yeah, first I want to say I really enjoyed the film. The colors were amazing first. Just the views, the scenery, everything was captured so well. But the question I want to ask you was, out of every part of the movie, and when you were talking about how you start by just having the idea and you just see it as a frame but not a scene, is there one scene that sticks out to you that says this is the movie? Is there one scene that really just stands out from all the others of how close this is to you and how powerful the meaning is?
That's a good question. There's a scene that there's two scenes that we took them out. It was one of the scenes that I thought, wow, this is what I stand for. This is who I am. Strongly. There's other scenes that made it into the cart that I of course, I think most of them I like them very much. But there are the scenes that I took out that were like, yeah, this is it. This. I think with the shots that made it into the movie. I think would be the scene where she's sort of holding seats with her hands. I think for me, what I believe and what I inspire, what I dream of, or, what I hope. I think it's everything in there. My fear, my hope, my everything, it's in there. And also the scene with the washing. For me, they're very similar. I'm doing the video installation now. It's about forgiveness. It's about mercy. It's about grace, and it's a lot of sewing. There's a lot of touching. There's a lot of washing. I think this motif of washing, it's something that somehow gravitating towards this touch, the human touch, the washing, and the stitching. Whether violent or whether peaceful or graceful, either way. So I think with the seats was the strongest for me.
Thank you.
And the washing. Thank you.
I have a question from Fernanda.
Wow. It's really not a question, it's just congratulations, Director Mosese, for the film. Now it makes sense that you are a poet, because for me, the narration at the beginning of the film and at the end, for me, it was clear a poem. So that is, it makes sense to me that you're a poet. But also, I would like to tell you that for me, the powerful title you choose for the film was quite concrete in the story, because that woman was, during all the film, was just thinking about her own burial. And she wasn't, in the end, it was a resurrection for this woman, along with the town and the new generations. So thank you very much for your beautiful film.
No, thank you. Thank you. I love your observation. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Next, we have Betty Fisher. Betty, we can't hear you.
Sorry. I asked about the role of the chief and how that changed over time. Can you hear me?
The role of the chief and how it changed all the time. Hello?
Hello? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. How it changed all the time.
Right.
How it changed all the time.
Over time.
Oh, how it changed over time. Oh, okay, okay. Oh, I see what you mean. I think it, you know, the chief was also built out of many other chiefs that I met in Lesotho. Like a very simple people, and trying to understand, but trying to make something out of literally nothing in these small villages, and also trying to be the chief for the people, and yet also dealing with the state, dealing with the government, because the chiefs are not, they don't have power. We have a king, but it's a constitutional monarch. It doesn't have power. But in the small villages, if you want your passport, that's when you can come to their office where they stamp it. You know, so I think it's also, but they still care about the people. They're still juggling between the politics of the country itself, and also with not having power. It's very simple people who just, I guess, ordinary people who just want the best for their villages. And that's my chief in this film, that he's composed of many other people that who are in the same positions, that are just going with the tide, are going with the flow. But of course, they want to stay. But of course, if the government wants them to leave, they know better. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. And then we have Yolanta, our director. Oh, Yolanta, we can't hear you.
Very simple. Can't do it. Yeah, I was just amazed with your film, with visual aspects, the narratives, and I was amazed that you even work in editing room. That for some filmmakers, that's the work they really do, and they film. But I have two different questions. I want to cut it short. One is about the main character, the widow, and your inspiration for creating the character. And the reason why I'm asking is that after I rewatched the film like the third time, I realized that the female character really interacts with male characters that are developed very well. like the priest, the political guy, the mayor, but we see the other female characters not existing. Is it something you don't know how to create female characters? I would like you to talk more about female versus male characters. She talks about her, the widow talks about the daughter and granddaughter died, but you develop the full scope, the visual of how her husband died. And we see her grief over the son, the time the son died. So I was just wondering if you could comment on what I said. I may be wrong.
No, it's a very good question. I'm very aware of these characters. I mean, I created them. Whichever way they did, whatever they did, it's was my decision. I was very precise with how I create them. So I created them from two levels of thinking, of state, of what is there or the reality. But also I have my own reality, my hopes for the future. You wouldn't necessarily find mantua in many villages, but I almost want to make them, when I create more of mantuas, but she's not a typical person that you'll find in the small villages. So that's my idea of the future. And the idea of, like if you look at Bono, for instance, was a typical person that you'll find in the village and doing exactly that. Like inspiring for better living, inspiring for better, but still stuck in that situation. I talk about this in my short film, it's the same thing that she it is actually with the same person who played my short film, that you see her becoming a stick fighter, which is the very male-dominated sport. And she sort of disguised herself and she's a woman, but she has no place in this sport, but she eventually become part of this sport. But eventually in the end, he goes back to the normalcy. He goes back to going with all the women, lining up, going to the forest, getting the woods and coming back to the kitchen. It's almost like, it talks about time again. It's almost like it's so indifference with her struggle. It is just indifference. It doesn't matter whether she excels in the sport, it doesn't matter. In the end, she goes back to where it started. So I think I created with the same levels of my hopes for the future, and also of what is there, the reality of what is there, and not necessarily animated or make something that is, I mean, of course, some extent it's to make something that is not there, because that's what I want to put out. That's what I want to see. I want to see more of that. When I was shooting that scene in the end, the village people were like, no, we cannot allow you to have a elderly woman naked. And then I had to tell them why. I had to tell them why they should support me. They should stay and be here because of what the government, that village could be next. That it takes a person to do this. It's the reason why she had to do this. And that's when they understood, that in my film, I wanted to amplify the Zilliard. I wanted to amplify the person, the wrestler. Because it comes from, there's so many things, especially when I was growing up, even now, there's so many things that we accept that it's almost like a handshake, but they're wrong. We shouldn't accept them as normal. For instance, if you go to the bank, you see people lining up for the bank. Nobody complains. No, not even one person complains. It's almost like, why are you complaining? I mean, you complain for the rest of your life. People are tired of complaining. They don't complain anymore. And it's you find this in many other countries where people have become almost dead, and that's the theme of the film. It talks about metaphorical death, and it's the thing that was one of the things that was lying heavy on me. It's to be able to capture this deadness, you know, that we need, that not we need or what could happen, but just to show it as it is and somehow hope for the resurrection. I don't know if I answer your question. Yeah, so I created in both levels, and I think the choice for Mary, it was very natural one. I mean, for some reason, with even my other short film, I was also, it has some people also who have reached a certain age, but have always been somehow, I think I'm always fascinated by that. I need to find out, I'm yet to find out why. Yeah.
Thank you. So our next question is going to come from Ed.
Hi. It was a fascinating, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
It was a fascinating film about modernization, and you had so many, I was really impressed with the striking visuals that you had throughout the film. And your lead actress had such an expressive face, but I was wondering, was the casting procedure difficult? Because I'm sure you use non-professionals involved in the cast.
No, yeah, I was very lucky. I was very lucky because my producer Kate, in fact, after we have now prepared the schedule, I was very worried that with the time span that we have, I don't think we will have enough time to find an 80-year-old who speaks Sesotho.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could find someone, but Sesotho is very complex language. It's very, very poetic. It's like literally people speaks in prose, and it's so much it's rooted in oral poetry. And even when the people living in South Africa, they don't necessarily, I mean, they mix it with so much other languages, and I guess that our language is still very strong because I think we are very small people. We are very enclosed. We are very landlocked. So our language is still very strong. It's really backward in time. So that was my worry, that I might not find someone who could actually say the language the way I intended to. The use of language in the film was very important to me. And somehow we got lucky because my producer, Kate, sent me a tape of Mary. And also even Mary, it's not the character that I wrote. I wrote someone who's totally different. I wrote someone who was like a little bit of a broad shoulder and very dark skin. And for some reason, when I saw Mary, I just thought, yeah, I think we find the right person. I think she will do it. And she was really beyond our expectations.
How about?
Well, you cut off.
I think you.
Okay. How about the other? Was it difficult to cast the other parts? In the film, were they difficult to cast, or?
It was difficult because I think of that. Some of the people didn't know film or television or drama. They didn't know what we were talking about. But they, of course, we had to explain to them as sort of it's a play, like children's play. But of course, some of them knew, but there are people who are there who they've been shepherds all their lives. So, but they are willing to do it. So I think we had to, I think it became a little bit easy, I guess. It wasn't difficult that much because I was looking for people that I really like to to work with. And then once I found them, they were willing to actually learn. They were willing to memorize the lines. They were just willing.
Amazing. So next we're going to have Roger.
Hi there. I just want to begin by saying how much I appreciated the film. I think it's an extraordinary film. I think, and I say this with some hesitation, given the limits of my knowledge, but I think it comes close to inventing a quite distinctive cinematic language in the way you combine the visual and the soundscape, which is extraordinary, and the way you put together a narrative that is at once has a kind of narrative thread to it, and yet is so elusive in the way it works. If I may, I just want to offer a couple of comments, because we were given the excuse of being able to make comments, and then I have a question. The first comment is that I think the film is extraordinary at conveying multiple forced displacements in the lives of the people we're looking at. You take us back to the displacements that through sickness that brought people to the plains of weeping. You then talk about the displacements that took people into and take people into South Africa, and particularly into the mines. You then, of course, talk about the forced displacement from the area with the dam, but then you have the forced displacement of Mantoa from her home. And so we're constantly thinking about what it's like to want to be able to settle down and have roots and graves and ancestors in the place while continuously being under pressure to move on. I think you do it in an extraordinary way. The second thing I wanted to say was that I was trying throughout the film to work out whether you were suggesting that for the characters, they could bring meaning to lives that were so unstable, through either storytelling or through one or two forms of religious reference. And towards the end, I came to the feeling that in a way, what you were talking about, this may go to your issues about not liking structure. It was more that storytelling and religious belief were the ways that people coped with the absence of meaning. And I thought there about the randomness of the boy who is shot, the randomness of the burning of Mantoa's house. People have narratives to try and make sense of that, but we never learn what the true story is. We just get a sense that people flood disastrous moments with narrative. So those are my two comments, and I don't know whether they resonate at all with what you were trying to do, but
Yeah,
they were
absolutely.
part of, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you for your observation. Absolutely. I'm trying to think of the first one that you talked about.
I was talking about the multiple forced displacements and how you layered them one on top of the other.
Yes. It was a very important one. I see this film as sort of a mosaic of ideas, of my observations. But one of the silver line of the film that was very personal. It was because of when I was a child, I was evicted from our home. So and then since then we started to move from one place to another, one school, new friends. I lost a sense of place. And I remember when I was a kid, I would go back to this place where where it used to be our home, and I was still the toys of the kids who were living there. I think there was something that I somehow I still remember the feeling I felt when I used to go back to this place to steal their toys. It was like they took something away from me, and I think it has. I mean, now I'm living here in Berlin, but I just never connected to a place. The only place that I connect to is that place when I was in my childhood, the one that was taken from me. So the whole idea was actually to have the displacement in every frame. Even some of them is very minute, it's very subtle. You wouldn't even see it, but it's literally in every frame, there is always that displacement, something that is displaced.
You have amazing things going on in the deep background, people walking across the top of a ridge, for example.
Yes.
That gave me the sense of people on the move all the time.
Yeah, and also the other thing that I just that maybe because when we're editing, many cycles were cut out. I shot them moving in cycles, like even the person is going straight, but I want him to move in cycle. So the camera movement actually goes in cycle, but we happens to cut it because of the rhythm and the actual film rhythm. I had to sort of overcome myself to for the sake of pacing and just to be a little bit strict. And I was working with very talented people who are very good with this, so they forced me. Before, the film was like 4 hours, so they literally like really talked me out of the long film.
I'd pay to see the 4-hour version.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have Zimena.
Hello, thank you very much. I don't have a question, but a comment. I Joined the Rest is one of the best films I have ever seen. So powerful, and a little differently, I think the female characters is not only this woman, but also the young mother that lost her boy, and also at the end the little girl, the eyes of that little girl, like passing the torch to her. I think is so powerful, and also this woman, old woman that was, as they mentioned, like a death living, and in that very last act gives the rest that hope. I think that was your purpose, and we always measure what is productivity to make this done, or what is progress little about, and the way that you handle it from my perspective was so powerful, because it doesn't mean that we have to change the entire world. Probably the things are going to keep as they are, as you mentioned, but that single act, it moved the people that were there in that moment. They changed that life in that precisely moment. And that, I think, is the powerful part of your film. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's funny because when I was one of the inspiration that I got when I was building this character was that when I was writing, I was running past people who are waiting on the line, and it was lit under this really scorching sun. There was just everybody was just sweating bullets, and they're just standing there. And I had this feeling of creating or sculpturing someone who will, to borrow all their faces, all their frustration, or all their whatever they lost, that spirit of fighting that or maybe the spirit of that brings them alive, or whatever is that is lost. I wanted to sculpture one face that can represent them all. So this was the feeling that I keep having when I was creating this character, looking at the people and wishing that I could create one face that will speak, or that I'll somehow not speak for them, but not even speak for them. I think to one face, the sculptured, I don't know, I don't have words to describe this feeling. To sculpture every feeling. Yeah, I don't know how to say it. To mold in everything that they feel, or whatever it's there, the last feeling that they have, or whatever, if they still feel, with that small things, and to take the pinch of this clay from here, clay from here, clay from here, and sculpture one face. this was sort of a picture that kept coming to my head when I was creating this character.
Amazing. So I actually have a quick question, if that's okay. Your film has, the only way that I can really explain it is breath. There's just a lot of it. It's inhaling and exhaling with the gravity of like generational spirituality, which I just love, especially in the opening scene. I was interested in what were you interested in conveying in that first scene, and what made you start with this travel through, you know, this colorful space?
I'm always striving to convey feelings. Sometimes it's not necessarily an idea, but it's the feeling. It's what I'm feeling. Especially that sequence in the beginning. It's based on intuition, on this feeling of someone who is present but not present, or someone who's probably he was under the flood, or he was a witness during that flood, or that he is in the future, in the present, in the contemporary world. This was but why I did it, I don't know. It's just the feeling of it has to be there, it has to start with him.
Beautiful, thank you. So our next question comment is going to come from Yolanta.
Yes, I have a question about the filmmaking process because not many filmmakers are in charge of writing script and filming the film and be cameraman and then edit the film. And you are the one, you know, you're a genius, what can I say? But my question is about the editing process. Like I know many great filmmakers from Poland for whom the real fun was to edit the film. And I know it's a huge question because you need to talk about a script and how much the actors brought to the film, how much the script changed, how the filming went over 4 weeks or 5 weeks, right, in different weather. But to me, it's important, like what happened in the editing room. Did you have fun? Did you feel like now you were in charge of making a film, of having this so many shots, great shots that you made, close to like each one is piece of art, but you need still to make the final editing.
I think I love being in the editing room because one of the things that I always wish that cinema was not this whole army of people, that I could do it alone, that I could just do it alone. I feel secure that I can communicate with myself. I don't have to make sure that I communicate clearly with everybody, because I'm struggling with that. So I because of this, I always feel like I could do it alone. And what I like about the editing, it's I'm writing again. I have a chance now to save my movie. I have a chance now to write what I actually want to write. It gives me a chance if I failed when I was shooting it. Now I can. It gives me another chance to tell the story that I want to tell. So, but of course, I also think that when you have a good collaborator, and I don't necessarily have a good collaborator, I feel like until then, I will still do it myself. But I think when you have collaborator who really speak the language, if you speak the same language, I think it's best to sort of collaborate the person do the editing. But I like doing the keys. I like touching the keys and moving things, and because there's so much decision that has to be made here, And if I think when I touch the keys, I act, it responds differently. The film responds differently than when I'm sitting next to a person. And because it becomes now a practical, it becomes, it feels like a job now. It starts to feel like a job. Okay, we need to do it, cut here. I thrive on mistakes, especially when it comes to editing. This is what I want to leave the room for that, for those mistakes. Because now, you know, when you're shooting the film, yeah, you want to leave the room a little bit for this, for the gods to walk in. You want to leave the room for this magical moments to happen. But you are very restricted because you need to have, you know, the time is moving. Maybe the cut it's getting full. You have no luxury of time to shoot around. So you can. So I hope I trust in the process of editing that I can allow the God to walk in editing.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I need to take one more addition to the question I asked. How much you are when you are close to your what you shoot, and for the narration perspective, you need to cut it off. How you feel about it? You understand my question? When you are shooting, you have the beautiful scenes, and for narrative purposes, for making the film shorter, whatever, you need to cut it off, your most beautiful scenes. How you feel about it, and was it the case in your film?
Yes. One of the most beautiful scenes that was this two men, the chief and the priest crying together. This, for me, they were in the church and looking at Jesus being lifted up, being unhanged. And then now he started talking about his wife, and the chief started talking about his failures, and they were embracing and crying. I wanted this scene so much to be in the film, but it was just in the wrong place.
Yeah.
This broke my heart. So especially when you do the editing, you have to prepare for this. You have to be prepared for the scenes that you will have to give up, that you think they are the best scenes in the world, you know.
I have a follow-up question just on the scenes. There are two scenes in the film that I really found interesting, but I struggled to understand. There was the scene where there were 3 or 4 people shearing or cutting sheep, you know, doing something. That really escaped me. I didn't quite get it. And then there was another scene also where it looked like there was a shooting of a young boy. But all those just ended like that, and I was still trying to find out what happened here. Would you just help me understand some of those?
I wish that the whole film could be like this, that we're all wondering what happened here. This is what I inspire to reach that level, that it's not as simple as, you know, as you see it. Okay, it's 1, 2, that's it. We understand it. Because I start to realize this film, it grows in me. I think the more I watch, the more I start to understand it even better. If I can tell you what the scene is about, it's not necessarily about that. I think it's something that is very personal to a person who's viewing the film. Whatever you make out of it, and that's the whole idea, I think, of creating these images, is to create mosaic of ideas, and that you can interpret them. You can interpret them in your own way. That's the I have a love and hate relationship with the structure of the screenplay. It needs to have a structure, and I love these tools, because I mean, of course, they've been done by the Greeks, and it's something that is proven to be sure that the audience will follow this, which I love. And I think it's a tool it's something that in your arsenal that you can actually use. But also I like the idea of fluidity, the idea of it's not so easy. You don't get it so easy in watching it once and then you get it. It's nice when, if you get a chance to see something again and you see something totally different. Because if I can tell you once what it means, it robs you from having your own experience of the film or of the sequence or of this idea of the observation that it's there.
Well, that's beautiful. And I think that's a beautiful way to end our discussion here. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this event, and thank you to our moderator, Macrina, and just for speaking. And also thank you to the wonderful creator of this beautiful, magnificent film that we can all say we very much so connected with. This is not a burial, it's a resurrection screening and event is presented by the CMU International Film Festival and the African Studies Program at the University of Pittsburgh. The event is organized in conjunction with the University Center for International Studies at the University of Pittsburgh and the Center for Student Diversity and Inclusion at CMU, sponsored by CAUSE Humanities Scholars Program, CMU's Department of History, and CMU's Graduate Student Assembly. Also, please be on the lookout for a survey regarding tonight's event in the coming days. Your responses help us make improvements for future films in our virtual format. This is not a burial, it's a resurrection. Will be available until tomorrow for viewing. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again at future events.
No, thank you very much for having me. Thank you. I appreciate you guys.